Today on the show, I have the pleasure of speaking with Evan Holladay. Evan is a real estate developer and investor who's been involved with the acquisition and development of over $225 million worth of US multifamily. Evan is passionate about providing working families a good quality, affordable place to call home. Providing affordable housing is part of Evan's mission and part of his big why. Evan is also the host of a great top-ranked podcast called Monumental. You should definitely check that out after you listen to this show today. But enough out of me. Let's get him out here. G'day, Evan. Welcome to the show. How you doing today, mate?
Yes, doing good, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
My pleasure. As I said earlier, before we had to, double record here, is that I had the pleasure of being on your show a little while ago, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I hope today I can reciprocate, and we can have an incredible show here. A bunch of fun, dive into some awesome topics, and but the first question I ask all my guests when they come on the show is, rewind the clock and tell me how you made your first ever dollar as a kid.
Yeah, so I love this question. So really, for me, it all started with I was pretty young. I can't remember the age, but I started selling candy at the top of my street to anybody that was walking by, and bought a big bulk bag of candy, and marked it up probably 100%, and sold it to anybody walking by, and actually recruited some friends, and were paying them in candy to help me sell the candy. And from there, it snowballed into selling popcorn for the Cub Scouts and selling curbside paintings and lawn care and kind of everything in between.
Awesome, awesome. Well, walk us through where you've come from. You've clearly created an awesome real estate brand for yourself, and you've been involved with $225 million worth of multifamily real estate on both the acquisition and the development side. But maybe walk us through the journey, because that's what the show is all about. We want to understand your journey, where you've come from, and maybe a bit of the vulnerabilities in which you've experienced along the way in order to get to where you are today.
Yeah, this I love this question. So really, it all started for me at a young age with my parents building a foundation for me of becoming who I am today. I was blessed with two very loving and supportive parents, and and I really credit a lot of who I am today to them. And for me, my mom was very entrepreneurial. She was very driven. She wanted to give back and impact the world in meaningful ways. She started many companies. She started nonprofits, and she really she had an impact on so many people, and that in turn was passed on to me just by being around her and learning from her. And so her and my dad both really taught me the power of just loving people and treating people with respect and finding the good in people. And that has really just kind of been a basis for who I was growing up. And so I originally wanted to get into pre-med and medicine after a pretty bad soccer injury left me getting a knee surgery. And from there, I went into college at University of Louisville. And about a year into it, I was taking all these science and chemistry classes, and I was like, you know what? This is not for me at all. Like I want to impact people, but not with this. I hate this. So I saw this $55 million development going in on campus. It had just been announced. I was like, that is what I want to be doing. That's where my passion lies. I don't know what it is, but I love that. And so I just kind of ran with it. I said, okay, well, let's find the owner. Found the owner, got a connection, convinced him to give me a shot. And it wasn't just like he would give me a job. I had to show my value to him. And that really came about where he's like, bring some people out to the groundbreaking. And so I ended up bringing out like a few hundred people. And after that, he's like, okay, you're on. Like, we'll take you on. So I learned, soup to nuts, like A to Z development, property management. We leased up 380 units in like 5 months. It was ridiculous. Like there was just experiences that I had there that helped propel me to learn so much of the business. And from there, I was like, well, let's try to do this on our own. So myself and four other people started a modular development company in college. And so we built out this company and we started pitching it to venture capitalists. And they're like, hey, you guys got something here. Like, keep running with this. And built a few single family. And then we were like, well, let's take this up to multifamily. And that's when finding partners, I found the group LDG Development and had worked with them for over 6 years and really learned about workforce housing, about affordable housing. And, that's really where I cut my teeth of learning from the best of the best, one of the top developers in the country, and learning how to source deals, how to pull in equity, how to rezone property, how to build 240 units at a time. So that's really where I learned a lot of what I know today. And now propelling to today with my own company, Holladay Ventures, and now looking at both new construction, workforce, and affordable housing, and being able to create values through acquiring existing properties and either value adding them or turning them back into tax credit or workforce housing property. And really all like centers around my mission of trying to provide better opportunities for families through housing, and then also empowerment of residents. That I think is so powerful. Like the housing is one thing, but it's actually the ability to give them the education that is going to stay with them for the rest of their lives, and being able to instill a lot of the personal development, like what we talk about on podcasts, what you and I talked about on. So like those types of things, I think would be so powerful in the right minds of our residents, and help empowering them to think bigger, to grow their mindset, to learn about financial literacy, like so many of these things that they may not be thinking about day in day out, and helping empowering them to live a better life. So that's it in a nutshell.
That's an incredible story, mate. Like, and really goes to a big pat on the back to yourself to going and figuring out how to do it, right? Like you saw something, you went and you hounded an owner who probably told you to piss off a lot of times until he gave you a job. But you had to prove again, you had to prove your worth, and
Yep.
you got a bunch of people to the groundbreaking. But I love also how you pivoted, right? You thought you had this idea in your head that you were going to go into pre-med. But you saw something else and you ran with it, and that's really, really incredible. I think that is something a lot of people can take away from your story, is about that ability to identify something that resonates with them and then go off and create a business out of it, because not everyone has that type of mindset that you have. But a little bit in and around about the modular housing, I really was quite interested about that, given that I have a structural engineering background. Tell
Right.
me a little bit more about the modular housing, and how you stumbled into that in college, because what were you studying to be stumbling into modular housing?
Well, you're not going to believe this, but I was studying economics. So I was an economics degree with an entrepreneur minor, and that entrepreneurship program, they encourage you to start your own business. So that was really kind of the got the ball moving in our minds of like, okay, well, what kind of business would we want to start? And I was infatuated. I love real estate at this point. I was working for the developer, working on that $55 million development. So, we were like, well, let's do something in real estate. And then our professor happened to have a relationship with another professor at University of Kentucky, who they were teaching a class on literally designing out modular housing. So they started the idea. So that's the other thing too, is like you don't necessarily always have to come up with the idea. You can take other people's ideas and run with it and partner with them. So we actually got permission, got the rights to their plans. They had already come up with all these plans for single family and multifamily modular housing. And we said, hey, we want to commercialize what you guys are actually doing in the classroom. So we got free plans, basically free. They were doing it for a class project, and professors and students were both doing these plans. And so we said, we want to build that into a business. And they said, yeah, run with it. And the unique thing about these plans is they weren't just modular, they were modular built in a houseboat manufacturing plant. So Kentucky, where I went to school, the state of Kentucky, they have a like mecca of houseboat manufacturing plants, believe it or not. And they had just laid off 1,100 skilled workers at all these plants with the housing market crash. So we're like, how can we put those same people back to work, use the same existing facilities that are now like mostly dormant, and use literally the same layout as a houseboat. It's the same rectangular shape, and turn that into single family or multifamily housing. So we did a few trial runs with the single family. We're like, well, the real scale ability of all this is in multifamily. And so that's when we were really trying to prove our concept in Louisville, Kentucky. And that's when LDG is like, well, how about you partner with us and do some stuff for workforce and affordable housing? So the idea kind of stopped there, but it's something that's always been in the back of my head that I really want to pursue. So that will probably be something that we at least venture into, as far as seeing if it's economical to do that. I think it has to make sense on the right project, and it has to be a competitive enough market where frame build on-site construction just is too expensive.
Right.
Where we can find some efficiencies. Maybe there's a factory right nearby the job site. If we can find something like that, then I would really love to take advantage of that on one of our future development sites.
Awesome. So you haven't, it was all in the concept stage and you never actually took it to a marketable business, right?
Yeah, we built some single family that was more of like a proof of concept with a nonprofit partner. So we didn't actually build out a full business. We were in the works to build that out on the multifamily side, but had an opportunity to work for one of the top developers in the country. So I took it and ran with it.
Well, mate, it's always going to be there when you go back. But I know, as a structural engineer, I worked for a big developer in LA here, and I actually went to a couple of job sites where they were doing modular housing. A company called Gurdon, who's I think based out of Arizona, but did all the manufacturing and warehouses in Arizona. Would ship them across here to. It was actually in Torrance, California. It was a hotel, 250 doors, and it was everything came on the back of a truck. Like they had these two types of call it hotel rooms, and literally the bed was inside with the TV strapped to the bed. That's how much modular they've got, and they just had to back them onto the corridor, and the corridor is where they sort of all the HVAC and all the electrical and all the plumbing came, and they'd run them down the corridor, and that's how you could get the local labor unions to be on board, because that was the last piece of the puzzle, right? You had everything built in factories, but it only stopped at the doorway, at the threshold. Once it hit the corridor, if you think of like a Hyatt house or something like that, we have a corridor down the hall, down the hotel hallway. And that's in the ceiling. That's where all the HVAC and all the plumbing is run, right? And so it was really interesting to see that come together. But also there is a little bit of redundancy of materials in modular housing, because you have double floors, you have double walls, and that is where something you're slightly going to be taller and you're slightly going to be wider because you're doubling everything up. Really super interesting. I think the industry in ground up construction needs to go that direction, because there's just so much waste on site. If you've ever been to a stick built, and when I say stick built, wood frame multifamily garden style, there's so much waste on site, and just the cost of it is astronomical. And if you can get
the timeline,
right, the scheduling. So if you can get your stuff started to be prefabbed in the warehouses and then shipped to site and then sort of put it together like Meccano sets or Lego, it's going to obviously save a lot. The theory is good. And I've not seen a company yet who's gone out and executed. There's another big company that raised, I think, over $1 billion and was trying to be the Amazon of construction modular housing. I forgot their name, and it's going to rack my brain. But if anyone's listening, please leave it in the comments. But
I know who you're talking about. I can't think of them either.
they was out in California here. They raised a ton of money. I'm going to think of it, and it's going to come to me after the show. But anyway,
Katera.
That's it. Boom, you got it.
Yeah.
Yes, Katera is a company that my old boss, who's a developer, was partnering with on a couple of projects. All sounds good, but when it came to the nuts and bolts of approval process and understanding the local city councils and getting it approved, because that's the other thing, is that you've got to have local officials and building and safety officials understanding what is being built off site, and particularly if you're going across borders and states. Different states have different building codes to some extent. So making sure you have the checks and balances before they do up the walls, and all the plumbing is correct, and all the electricity and the electrical is being wired correctly. That is really, really important, because that could be a life safety hazard thing. And that's It's obviously the ball's rolling. The train is slowly starting to leave the station. It's just about municipalities catching up with the safety. So I do go on because it's
Yeah,
something very, very interesting to me, because as we become a bigger population, we're trying to cram a lot more into smaller spaces, and the cost of housing is going up, and that's a big part of why you're on the
yeah,
show. So talk to me a little bit about that.
and that
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that goes back to the part of my why is like the affordable housing. Like, affordable housing is simply a supply and demand problem,
Right. Right.
and we can't build fast enough in the areas where people want to move, partially because of politics, but also partially because of cost, right? Of like cost of construction and time it takes to build. So if there's any way that we can with modular speed up the timeline and lower our costs, then that could be a game changer for affordable housing.
100%. 100%. So tell me a little bit more about this why within you. Like, why do you want to help the average person get into affordable housing? And then we're going to dovetail that into the mindset side of it. But let's start with the why on what exactly you just said, the politics and the cost. Give me your background on how you got to that point.
Yeah, so like everything else in life, I think it came to me through a journey. But I think the biggest thing for me is like I think everybody is built for massive change in the world, and that's part of why I called my podcast Monumental. I truly believe that we can all make monumental change in the world and really make a difference. And I feel like this passion of mine for development and real estate and multifamily and being able to marry that with the ability to actually not just build like luxury, class A or condominium beautiful places, which would be fun, but it just doesn't seem fulfilling enough for me where I get the true benefit of knowing that I'm actually helping somebody. And that's what means a lot to me is actually helping somebody on their journey, on their path towards a better life for their family or their kids. And so that's where, coming across affordable workforce housing, we started learning about it when we first did the modular housing and basically just, sat down with nonprofits, sat down with affordable developers, sat down with housing authorities who administer all the permanent supportive housing. Like there is real demand for it, and not only that, there's also just in there's an ability to actually like make a real impact with people and get to do what I love every day with real estate and multifamily investing. So it is the perfect marriage between those two, and really, like I said, I think everybody can make a massive impact in the world, and so that's my goal is to help more people reach that.
So tell me more about the there's a huge demand, right? But we're constantly being heard here in the news and the media that California is too expensive, New York's too expensive, San Francisco too expensive. So what are local municipalities doing? What are these nonprofits doing? What are governments doing to try and change that? Because the cost of housing isn't going to go down, right? Like it's like insurance. You just constantly keep going. It's
Yeah.
inflation, right? Things keep getting more and more expensive year over year. So does the cost to build stuff. So does the cost to buy that land. So what is some of the solutions you've heard being kicked around some of these meetings that you've been president?
Yeah, so just paying attention to different cities and working in many different cities, you start to see kind of what works and what doesn't work. And really, there's a few things that really can lead to like actual change in affordable housing. Because you're right. I mean, it goes back to supply and demand. Like we literally aren't building near enough what we need to be um, to keep the equilibrium of what is needed for affordable housing and what is actually provided. So I think it comes down to it's really like the financing that's in place. So there needs to be more incentives from the state, city, and county level. So what we've done on the city and county level recently has been because the federal level has not helped out at all. They've been kind of kept the status quo really like the last 10 years as far as funding availability, and in some cases the funding has actually gone down. So it's really like the responsibility has been shifted over to the cities and the states, and really more so the cities. So really, it's like, especially the fast-growing cities, the Austins, the LAs, the San Franciscos, like the cities where a lot of people are moving right now. It's really being put on them. And so one thing we've been doing in Texas, and all over the Southeast, is doing tax abatements, partnerships with the cities or city agencies, where they take partial ownership, and in return, we get a full or most of our taxes abated for 10 to 15 to 20 years. So that is a way where, put that into your pro forma, and real estate taxes are typically one of your biggest expenses, and they typically grow every time you get reassessed. So imagine having a cap on that, and basically saying whatever we're paying on the land today, or whatever we're paying on the property now, that's freezed for the next 10 to 20 years. So that is tremendous for our loan sizing, so we can borrow way more money, sometimes, $2 million more. It's basically like almost like a TIF, a tax increment finance deal, where we're borrowing more money because we're upfront and being able to pay for the development by foregoing taxes for the next 10 to 20 years.
Right.
So that's been a huge tool that we've been able to use over multiple municipalities. But so that's one thing, is creative financing. The other one is more incentivized zoning for workforce and affordable housing. That's something that not very many cities are doing, but if there's one thing that I've experienced time and time again, is that everybody wants affordable housing until it's in their backyard. And it's a very, like, every single time, almost every single time it happens, unless you have like strong political leaders like city council members or mayors that really like understand the need and are willing to help educate their community and their constituents, then you're fighting an uphill battle, because you're dealing with local officials that usually think that you're going to build the 1960s style housing projects, and you're going to bring the ghetto, and you're going to bring crime, and you're all the opposite things of what we actually build. I mean, what we build is like class A, almost luxury style apartment living, and we're just like one step below that, with, as far as like, we still have all the same amenities. We have a pool, we have a park, a playground, a workout center, a business center, a clubhouse. Like, this is a place I would love to live. And a lot of people are just not realizing that we've moved up our standard in affordable housing now, where we're actually providing something that's on par with luxury housing. So I think those are two of the biggest things, and then really just trying to get people on board and understand what we're doing here, and the fact that we're actually serving people that are already in your community, and people that are supporting your economy. That's the biggest thing too, is cities are going to realize, like, hey, we're starting to lose our mid-level workforce, because we can't house them anywhere, and it takes them an hour and a half to get to work each way, and they just can't make it to work, or they can't afford the gas, or they can't afford the car, whatever it is. Like, they're going to, the workforce is going to move out of town to somewhere more affordable, and then all of a sudden their economy is going to slow down, and they're going to be like, well, what happened? And that's where a lot of cities are hitting now, is they're like, wait a second, we need to hurry up and get caught up on the lack of affordable housing, because we haven't been paying attention to it for years. So we're starting to hit this like tipping point where most people aren't building affordable. There's not very many incentives, and you have like this not in my backyard activity. And with all those things combined, it's like, it's really becoming like a national crisis. Or even like a lot of the presidential candidates have been talking about it being part of their platform. So it's starting to make its way into an actual national topic.
Interesting. Well, you talk about so many awesome things there, like, so the understanding of financing, and if you take away the taxes, think about, I just underwrote a deal today. There was going to be $900,000 worth of taxes. Now that's an existing deal. And that's one thing I want to talk about, is like, this is all well and good for new construction, but what about the existing stuff? Like, there's these existing properties that are getting traded. They're still good. They can just need maybe a little bit of liquor paint, and, it's called lipstick on a pig. If not everything has to be brand new construction. And so what about those folks and those parts of the suburbs and the cities that, we're going to knock it over and we'll build a new one? Like, that, it sort of defeats the purpose in terms of the cost side of it. So how are cities trying to go with, it's well and good for the new side, and we'll talk about that and come back to that in a second. But what about the existing side? Is there anything on that side of the coin that the governments and cities are trying to do?
Sorry, it cut out a little.
Cut out a little. I'll repeat again. So on the we'll talk about the new construction side of it. What about the existing side? So are municipalities and local governments and incentives being applied to existing multifamily housing, which is still good and can still be used for the next 20, 30 years?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Honestly, like that's one of the biggest topics of conversation in the world of affordable and workforce housing is how do we maintain the affordable housing we already have? Because a lot of this, they have a 15 to 30-year compliance period, and a lot of these communities are coming off of their compliance period. So then the owners can just turn it over and jack up the rents and kick everybody out that's affordable. And then, that defeats the purpose of the affordable program. It helps the owner because they get significant upside. But really what cities and counties and states and all forms of government have been trying to do is trying to incentivize investors like you and me and your listeners to say, hey, there's other options out there where we've looked at deals recently where they currently have on a HAP contract. So we're being able to realize some upside potential. A HAP contract, for those who don't know, is basically like it's project-based Section 8 housing for the whole property, and you get a contract with the federal government. So you're providing basically almost like permanent supportive housing. And it's a different demographic, but you're serving a great purpose, and you still have the ability to be able to raise your rents with the HAP contract every few years and keep it in line with market. And that way you're still providing affordable housing and still getting that upside that you would see. So there's opportunities like that where, we're looking at those right now every day where we can keep existing affordable, and then also you can re-syndicate with more tax credits and basically add on another 15 years. You get more developer fee, you get a whole new round of tax credits to be able to fix up the property and have the tax credits pay for that rehab cost. And so return for keeping it in the affordable program.
Interesting.
So those are some ways that really, really help create or extend the life of existing workforce housing. But honestly, that's a big problem. It really is, because there's a lot of upside if you take a property and turn it market rate.
Right. No, it's huge upside, right? And that's the problem we as investors, I do as my part of my business. My fundamental business is going and not having Section 8 housing. I've been in Section 8 housing before. I didn't like it. It was a lot of headache. But there needs to be more incentivized programs out there for people like myself who can, who can go and buy existing properties and make sure that they are still profiting. Because one of the things I was just talking to my attorney today from a tax assessment standpoint on one of my properties, we're going and suing the city because every single city is trying to get more taxes out of multifamily housing in secondary markets. Yeah. And it's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, so I was more like, what the fuck are you doing? Because you're now going to cause me to not want to invest anymore because their taxes are too aggressive. And counties have been I know that, and now they have to put a cap on how much they can increase the taxes year on year. But still, we as owners have to go and fight them every single year because they're trying to jack it up. It's super frustrating when on one side you want to provide a quote unquote affordable level, right? And on the other side, you've got counties and municipalities wanting to try and profit from us as people have coming in and have beautified the properties, and they're just jacking up taxes, which makes, kills the pro forma, kills the NOI. And so it means I'm not going to be able to buy any more deals, and prices are going up anyway. So it's sort of this really weird conundrum we're in right now that It's just we're going to have to come to a tipping point at some stage because prices of multifamily are still going up and up and up. Cap rates are compressing, and so are taxes. So how the hell do you make a deal pencil when rents are relatively steady? 3-4% growth year on year, which is not massive. So yeah, any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, it just cut out. I'm really sorry. Place I'm at must have bad internet. I'm at a buddy's house in Louisville.
That's okay. No, what I was saying is that
I'm so sorry.
it was the combination of taxes with cities wanting to provide affordable housing, and it's like you're butting heads, right? Because on one hand, I can't do my business well if you're jacking up the taxes, and on the other hand, you've got costs of this multifamily being driven down because cap rates are compressing. So I'm sure you're seeing that in your market, right?
Yeah, yeah. Even in the affordable side, the cap rates are compressing. But yeah, you're exactly right. It's like, you're asking for affordable housing, but then you're also making it so that to push up the rents in order to be able to pay for higher real estate tax. Honestly, I think it comes down to be to put in place better zoning so that you can allow for easier multifamily development, easier approvals, and be able to develop more affordable housing.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that is really, really important. But then you've also got the other side of the coin, which is urban planning, right? Where the people wanting to live, call it millennials, call it young professionals. They want to live in and around urban centers. They don't want to have to drive 20 minutes to get to their work or drive 30 minutes to get to the shopping center. They want to live and eat and party and socialize in downtown suburbs, which is since the last recession, we've seen a big
Yeah.
uptick in urban centers being regentrified. So it's sort of like this hugely weird dichotomy we've got right now, which is on one hand, we've got to provide the workforce housing because the people who make the cities tick don't have anywhere to live. On the other hand, you've got these higher paid younger people, or not even younger people, just high paid people wanting to live in and around urban centers so they don't have to commute as much. They don't have to spend time in the car or on public transport. They can just get to work, and that's driving rents up, and that's driving, cost of living up and all that sort of stuff. So it is a really, really weird time that we're living in, coupled with the fact that money's cheap right now. Right, like we can get interest rates at 3-4%. Of course, like I don't see anytime soon slowing down of more development and the next retail strip center or the next downtown hip thing or bar or because downtown LA where I live is booming right now. You got stuff cranes coming out of the wazoo. So it's a really weird time. What do you think the future holds in terms of economy worldwide, statewide, I should say, and where we're headed?
I love it. Big question. I would say honestly, it's going to come down to cities and developers and investors getting creative. I feel like that's where the magic happens. So something that we've been working on is looking at opportunities where we can do affordable housing without tax credits.
Got it. Okay.
Sorry, it said hosted stopped video. Oh, okay, I see.
Keep going because I think it's the video that's just causing your lagging. So we'll just keep the audio for now.
Okay. So it's really like the magic happens when you're being creative, when you're looking at this creatively from a creative finance perspective. I think that's where a lot of the magic happens. So we've been looking at and working on a few developments in major metros in Nashville and Tennessee. Oh, affordable developments, working with states, not using any tax credit, and actually creating something that has 80% AMI, that has market rate housing all mixed in. So you have affordable and market rate together and being able to get that same tax abatement that we talked about earlier. And that allows you to create a true mixed income property where you can have, the young millennials who want to be in the market rate housing, and those that are in the workforce, all living together and being able to provide housing for both of them, and being creative about it, and not having to rely on the tax credits, which are usually a very cumbersome process and a very rigorous, like, regulation specific process that is very hard to navigate. And I think that's another reason why most of developers or investors don't want to even bother with affordable housing. It's like, why bother learning something if we're making a bunch of money here in the market rate side?
Right. No, I think, but that's, and then why also take away income from a municipality where they could use that income from taxes to, for other social good. So it's, again, but people have to come to the table. And if you're not willing to come to the table and talk about it and have developers, lawmakers, building and safety, change happen, thinking outside the bubble, like one of the things you said before, thinking bigger, we're not going to be able to come to resolve this issue. It's just going to continue to get worse and worse and worse. Because one of the other things we haven't even spoken about is the wage growth. Like, cost of living's going up, but wage growth is not keeping on par with it. Which is just another huge, big elephant in the room that no one really wants to talk about. We can talk about the development side and tax abatements and getting workforce housing. But if you don't
Yeah.
have wages increasing to a livable wage where people can afford to live in places and afford to eat, then that's also a huge issue. And again, something that we need to talk about, as a community, as an investor. So, I definitely look at, when we go and buy properties, we look at the average demographic and what they earn per household, how that compares to the national average. And I want to be above the national average. And then I look at the house prices and what the average house price is in and around the area, and look at, okay, well, does the mortgage for a single family house in the sort of 5 mile radius also is more than what my highest rent is going to be? Because that's the affordability aspect, right? If you can afford a $1,300 rent or a $1,500 rent, maybe you can go and afford to buy a house. So there's all these things we look at as investors, but also if the economy keeps growing and where it's growing, employers have to give breaks to employees to afford to live in. I don't care where you're investing, whether it be in LA, New York, San Francisco, or Texas, or North Carolina, or Alabama. These are all the same sort of factors that are contributing to the housing crisis that we have today. And you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that reminds me. There's been a lot of occurrences recently where companies are actually going out of their way to partner with or become developers themselves, because they want to create affordable housing options for their own employees.
Mm.
So you have, Kings Island outside of Cincinnati, an amusement park, building housing for their seasonal employees because they can't afford anything nearby, and they can't afford to have their employees miss work or skip out on work because they just can't afford to get there. You have it up in the mountains, up by all the ski resorts in Aspen, because none of the employees that work the ski lifts can even afford to live there.
Right.
So you have companies actually taking a more proactive role and saying, hey, the economy is not really finding that equilibrium for affordable housing, so we have to take it into our own hands. So I
Mm.
think that's what you're going to see more and more, is companies are going to help their employees. And then also on the healthcare side as well. I mean, we're looking at partnering with some major insurance companies that are saying, hey, if there's a way we can keep some of our highest cost members on our insurance, if we can keep them out of the like cyclically going back into the ER, if we can give them a good quality place to call home, and it's a stable home where we can provide services on a regular basis, then we can keep those same people that tend to cost us, 50 to 80,000 a year. If we pay, 10,000 a year or 15,000 a year for the rent, then that will exponentially cut down on our operation cost from an insurance perspective. it's like it's all of these different companies in different industries realizing that housing actually does play a really key role into their workforce. And
Right.
so once it hits their bottom line, then they're like, hey, we actually have to pay attention to that. We actually have to do something about that because nobody else is, and this is our company at stake, our employees at stake. So I think that's going to be something that's going to take hold more and more, is the private part of the economy. The corporations are going to say, hey, we got to do more of this ourselves.
Right. No, and it's true. It's a we live in the land of capitalism, and it is, for good or worse, for good or bad, it's leading to this where you have to have the private come to the table, the government come to the table, investors, and obviously the consumers coming to the table, and trying to figure out a way around it, and not everyone can, the big companies are going to be able to win all the time. There has to be a bit more socialistic viewpoint in order to have exactly what you're just saying, how their workers having a place to live, because if they don't have they can't afford, up around the ski resorts or at an amusement park, or, if we're an insurance company, we've got to house someone. If they've got a roof over their head, they're more likely not to cost us more because they're living on the streets or something like that. So it is a huge issue, massive issue. And don't get us wrong, people who are listening to this show, we're not even scratching the surface of the complexities involved. And then you've got to add in the layer and complexities of the state by state. So some states are different to other states.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge issue, something that we're not going to be able to solve in an hour's podcast. But it's a good, we have to talk about it, right? And if we're not talking about it as investors, as business owners ourselves, how do we ever move forward towards a solution? And it definitely, you've inspired me, I should say, invigorated me to be more and be better with my own portfolio. How can I be better with my property management company in order to allow, maybe not Section 8, but sort of lower income people to come in and rent, but also so I can still profit and make my investors happy. So I've got to, dance that fine line.
Right.
But it is the social good of making sure that, you're helping your neighbor, help thy neighbor, as they talk about. I'm not religious, but, that definitely says it in the Bible. So it's about being a community. And to what you're saying earlier in the show about what your why is,
right.
Community is so important. And if you don't have a community around you, and you have the haves and the have-nots, which is definitely where we are right now, and it's becoming worse and worse, we're on a path towards destruction, and that leads to conflict, and that leads to all sorts of other issues that, again, we're not going to cover in one episode. But mate,
something I want to add in,
yeah, sure,
just something I want to add in, Reed, is what on the value add side, one of the, and we do some value add work as well, is what you are able to do by investing in these communities, and by actually, you in a sense are increasing the life of that property, right? Like you are helping it stay available for renters for the foreseeable future. And by doing that, you in turn are actually increasing the the availability of housing stock in that area. And usually, as the life of property goes on, it does kind of find that middle ground balance between, it becomes part of the older housing stock, and then also finds that level of affordability. So in essence, you are increasing the longevity of the property, which helps the long-term supply and demand, which helps create more affordable housing.
Very true. No, you are very true. It does, extend the horizon of these properties that, built in the 80s or built in the 90s, that will go for another 10 or 20 years. But there is still some major issues out there that we've touched on a little bit today in the show, which has been really awesome. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight about it, because you definitely sound like you're in the thick of it in where you are in Louisville and Nashville. So, but mate, I do want to be very respectful of your time. At the end of every show, I like my guests to give me their top 5 investing tips. You ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Mate, what is the daily habit you practice to keep on track towards your goals?
Meditation.
You do it every day?
Yeah, every day. I do 10 to 15 minutes in the mornings. It's just one of those things where I notice the difference in my day when I meditate, I'm more clear, I'm more calm, I'm more centered, I'm more focused on where I want to go. And I really lose that. I can tell a difference when I don't meditate.
Mm. No, I'm exactly the same way. I meditate before I go to sleep, but I also do a little thing in the morning. It's a breathing exercise, and it's just something that I say my mantra for the day, whatever it might be, something that I'm grateful for, or whatever. But taking that 5 minutes before, rushing out the door to walk the dog or to do something or get on the phone, or it helps, as you said before, center. It centers yourself. And I know when I miss it and I skip it, the day's never as good. So
Yeah.
yeah, mate, I love it. Love it. How long have you been meditating for?
About 3 years.
Nice, man. Keep it up. Then it's
Yeah.
gonna come back in leaps and bounds, because it's a muscle we don't train enough of. I can tell you that, our brain.
Yeah.
Mate, who's the most influential person in your career to date?
Oh man, that's tough. Um, I would say honestly, it has to be, and this goes back to a big part of my why is my mom. So she recently, I think 3 years ago, passed away from cancer, and I was
Sorry.
pretty young when that happened. So that it really just trying to, fulfill her mission of impacting people, and she helped make me who I am today. So she's been probably the most impactful.
Mate, my condolences. I lost my mum coming up to 2 years ago. So also to cancer. So at a very young age,
Wow, I'm
66. So
sorry to hear that.
we share the same. We're in the same boat, big fella, and I'm sure both of them are looking down from above. If you believe in that, if you don't, I'm sure they're somewhere.
Yeah,
But their spirit lives on, and yeah, I
yeah.
can definitely tell that she's had a massive impact on your life, and she'll be super proud of you. So well done, mate.
Thank you, man.
What is the most influential tool in your business? Now, when I say tool, it could be a phone, it could be someone, or it could be another tool like a software tool. So what's the number one tool you use in your daily business?
That's a good question. I would say, hands down, the power of a powerful conversation.
The power.
So
Good.
yeah, I think it really just comes down to, like, think about in your business, where is the money made? Where is the impact made? Where do you actually make that exponential growth in your business? It's typically in really powerful conversations with, whether it's your brokers, your vendor, your investors, whoever, that's where the real difference is made in your business, is when you can have powerful conversations, on a regular basis.
Right. Yeah. No, and having these conversations right now are powerful, right? It drives emotion. It evokes emotion, and that's, we're talking about some pretty heavy stuff here on this show today about affordable housing and why it's so fucked up. But without having these emotional conversations, we can't then move to the next step of healing, or whatever you want to look at it, or change, or solutions. So yeah, really, really important. I love that. I'm going to use that a little more. That's such a cool thing that you think of, that's your tool in your business, powerful conversations. So awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Mate, what has been the biggest failure in your career to date? And in one sentence, what did you learn from that failure?
Um, I would say, I think that changes for me all the time, but I think I can probably pick a few that apply to this, but I'll just pick one that stands out. I think that, um, not so there's a project that 192 units. We had the funding all lined up, and it was in Lafayette, Louisiana, and the project, basically the economy tanked and the numbers no longer worked. Our rent levels just completely dropped. It just sinked completely down. And after that, I was just pushing so hard to get that deal, and so that at the time felt like the biggest failure, because it was like I'm literally doing everything in my power. I've always been told, don't give up, don't give up, don't give up. And here I was not giving up, and I just felt like I was spinning my wheels for nothing. And in a sinking local economy, it just felt like I wasn't going anywhere. And so eventually decided to call it a day, in the deal and call it quits. And that was so frustrating. We had $750,000 in pre-development into that deal. And so that to me felt like the biggest failure. But lo and behold, about a year and a half later, we had a local bank say, "Hey, do you have that deal?" It ended up coming around. They needed a deal in their own backyard. We got it closed 3 months later. So it ended up being a success, but at the time, it just felt like a massive, massive failure that you spin your wheels forever on something. But I think it teaches a valuable lesson of like sometimes it's better to let things go.
Mm.
And if it's meant to be, it'll come back around.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's such a humbling experience when you have $750,000 and you're just trying to squeeze the
Yeah.
juice out of a rock, and it just turns to stone.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't happen, and it's crazy, but things happen, and stuff happens, and life happens, and okay, you got to roll with it. And I think the biggest lesson that I'm hearing from you is that surrender, learning to surrender when something is not going your way. And it's okay to surrender, right? It's okay to be, okay, that didn't work out. Okay, I gave it my all, and that that you gave it your all. And sometimes the market's going to be the market, and you can't dictate that. So, learning surrender is a huge thing, mate. Last question: where can people reach you to continue the conversation? They want to be a little bit more in your sphere. Where do they go?
Yes, I would say the first place they should go is on Instagram at Evan Holladay. Holladay is Holladay. Very active over there. So send me a DM if you want to connect. Also, check out my website, evanholladay.com, and the podcast Monumental, which Reed is coming out shortly. So be on the lookout, guys.
Awesome, man. Well, look, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to jump in this show. We had a bit of technical issues, but I think we got through it all right. Some of the big takeaway things that I took away from our conversation is the ability to get invigorated about a cause in which we're all involved in some way or another, that is providing housing and affordable housing to people in order to keep the economy moving forward, in order to be and understand how we as investors are impacting the local economy, the local climate. How does us going in and renovating these properties and jacking the price up or the rent, how does that affect the local economy and the local workers? And so being mindful of that, I think, is one of the biggest lessons I've taken away from today's show. But also about thinking bigger, and having a bigger mission statement and having a why to drive you forward. And I think you're really, really clear on yours. And I think that's really well done, because a lot of people I get on this show aren't. And so kudos to you, big fella, because you do have your path laid out for you in front of you. And I know you're going to be extremely successful. Mate, did I leave anything out of that summary?
No, man, that was beautiful. I love it.
Well, mate, again, thank you so much for dropping by. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll catch up soon.
Yes. Thank you, man.
Well, there you have it. Another cracking episode, jam-packed with some incredible advice from Evan, and just some of the things that are involved in the complexities of bringing workforce housing to fruition. We talked about the government, we talked about costs, we talked about tax abatements, and we all talked about all that on the sort of the new construction. But how does that affect the existing construction? And so I really enjoyed my conversation with Evan here today. If you do have any questions for Evan, please hit him up on Instagram or at his website at evanholladay.com. I want to thank you all for taking some time out of your day to tune in to continue to grow your financial IQ, because that's what we're all about here on this show. The best way to give back to this show is to give it a 5-star review on iTunes. It only takes 2 minutes. And we're going to do it all again next week. So be bold, be brave, and remember, go give life a crack.